So the workshop that we're going to call this a masterclass because I am offering a deep dive into these tactics and strategies. I'm doing it on Black Friday, so if that interests you, I've put a link in the comments for how you can register for that. So, when you need to get free, when you need to decolonize your life in times of uncertainty, and I originally created this masterclass for folks who were feeling this way because of political uncertainty, but actually, if you're going through a divorce, you are already de facto in a certain period of uncertainty right now. You're in transition. Now, there's good news and bad news about transitions. Transitions can be very unnerving, and it can make you feel very unsteady, and it can feel very wobbly, and you can have a lot of uncertainty. But transitions are also some of the most potent moments for possibility. Because when you are in transition, that's when there's a lot of motion happening, and that's when you can kind of start making new connections that can replace some of the older connections you had energetically. So, I'm going to try to go through this very quickly because I want you to just really understand the core components that anyone can do, and if you want help with that, I'm here for it. So the first thing you have to do is you have to take a deep, hard look at your financial situation. Now, the good news is if you're in the middle of a divorce, you've probably already started doing that. So all of that pain in the butt stuff you've been doing to try to figure out whose assets are where and where the assets are going, or maybe you don't have any assets, but all of a sudden there's debt having to be divided, and then there's the home and the blah and the blah. So the good news is this is your opportunity to make shifts in how you receive money and how you spend money. And so in order to decolonize our spending habits, we have to look very carefully at what we are spending our money on. And for me, what I did when I first went through this process, well, I've gone through this process, I would say 2 times in my life have I gone through really just radical transitions. One of them was when I got divorced in 2020, and the other, oh my goodness, in 2000. Wow, I had a bit of a time warp shift there. We're shamans, we work outside of time, and time influences each other in these very interesting ways. So I got divorced in 2000, and then in 2020, when I had sort of a crisis that was induced by the pandemic, I reinvented my life again to get well, to get whole, to get healed. So in the year 2000, what I did for me, and this doesn't work for everybody, but for me, what I did is on the same day, on my birthday, in the year 2000, I filed for bankruptcy and divorce. And for me, what that did, both mentally and financially, is it gave me a totally clean slate. And I just was like starting from scratch. Now, here's the thing. If you have assets at all, like if you have a house that you live in that's worth more than whatever is the standard limitation, which in some states it's grotesquely low. Like I think here in Pennsylvania, the limitation for your value on your house is like $60,000. I don't know a single house in the United States of America that's worth only $60,000. So be very careful before you file for bankruptcy that you know what the status is about your assets, if you have any. If you have no assets, it's a really beautiful way to just cleanse. And it doesn't screw you over like it used to years ago. So I filed in 2000 and I was still able to buy a home later on. And my partner walked away from his upside down mortgage in 2008 and still was able to buy a home with me in 2016. So all of these scare tactics they try to give you about or morality tactics about how filing for bankruptcy is a moral failure. It's not. It's a business decision. It's a business decision about your life to let go of bad debt and not throw good money after it. But again, talk to a financial advisor, make sure you're protecting your assets, and do what you need to do that way. But the other thing is to just take a look at all of your mindless, unconscious spending habits. And that usually comes in the form of subscriptions every month. So what I did in 2020 is I really pared back, we had subscribed to everything, right? To the Netflix, to the Hulu, to the Amazon, to the this, to that, to the other. And so I really brought back in all those needless, mindless spending habits to get down to the core of like, what do I actually really need to survive? And then the other thing that helped me through that, and this is not the best advice for everybody, but when I filed for divorce, I think, I don't remember if it happened right then and there, but there was a period of about 1 year that I had to move back in with my mother, with my parents. My parents were actually separated at the time, but I moved back in with my mother. And some people don't have that ability. Some people don't have that option. Some people don't have a space they can go to. And it was definitely not the most ideal situation in my situation, because moving back in with my mother meant that I had to move back in with all of her hoarding habits and expose my son to all of those hoarding habits. However, and this leads me to my next number two. Number two is community. Your community of care. And if you don't have a parent that you can kind of temporarily stay with while you're in transition and while all the pieces are falling into place, if you have like a best friend, now here's the thing, friends are going to have a certain threshold of patience for generosity. Friends are usually willing to accommodate the space of weeks, but if you start getting into the space of months, people are going to be like, okay, what's your plan? When are you getting out on your own? There are also other options. There are shelters. There are options to get out. In my personal opinion, the thing to do first is to get out and get safe. Sometimes there are issues of emotional abuse involved where we think we can't get out and get safe. But here's the thing that's happening if you're going through divorce. Your primary family unit has broken down. Literally, the word divorce in legal terms is the dissolution of a marriage. It is a marriage that is dissolving. And so that, which generally is the primary community-centered structure in our lives when we are married, we need to figure out who are the other people in our lives that can kind of pick up where that structure has failed, right? We need new structures. So what I'm going to tell you right now, I'm actually not going to go into too much detail because when I wrote this specifically for people who need to maintain an awareness of what's happening socially and politically for the next few years. But decide for yourself, at the very least, who are your core community that you can reach out to just to check in on a weekly basis. So I recommend making a list. Who are your 3 best friends that you can just have? And what I do, I have one best friend that I have a daily check-in. Every morning when I wake up, she's in Los Angeles, I'm in Pennsylvania. I send her a text that says, "Good morning, my dear. Today I'm grateful for X or Y or Z. My intention is to blah, blah, blah." And we share a moment of gratitude and we share what our intention is for the day. And then I have another bestie that I, check in on a different basis. And then I have, I have a circle of friends where we are in tune with each other. We are in tune with each other's emotional needs. And when I went through my divorce, I had another friend who was going through her divorce at the same time. And so even though we didn't end up rooming together or living together, we were a connection for each other. She had the very beautiful, unfortunate situation in that as she was going through her divorce, one of her best friends was temporarily leaving the country. I think her husband was an engineer and he had a 1-year contract in another country. So she was able to house sit for her friend for a year while she was in transition out of her marriage. So start thinking outside the box. Don't get battled by the, oh my God, I don't have enough money for a down payment on a house, or I don't have enough money for a lease on an apartment. If you can get a few weeks or a month or two in someone else's space, like a relative or a parent or a best friend, and use that time to get your down payment together for whatever it is, that is the bridge, that's the transition for you. So check in with your community of people. on a daily or weekly basis. Make sure that you know how to ask for help when you need it, and make sure that whatever you can offer. I know that you're probably thinking, I'm going through this divorce. I don't have any energy for energy but myself, and that's fine. But even just the check-in with your community, what that does is that plants the seeds so that even though you're the one that needs help right now, if you just check in regularly, they trust and they know that when push comes to shove on their end, you'll be there for them. Okay? And that's how we build networks and community of care. Okay, number 3. Again, I'm going through this really, really quickly. If you want to go for a deep dive, join me on Black Friday if you want to avoid the capitalist feeding frenzy and do something different. Number 3 is your media diet. I used to teach women in film at the college level, and one of my students wrote to me, I think it was about 6 months after the class had already ended, and this former student wrote to me. And she was like, "You've ruined movies for me. I can't not see all of these harmful stereotypes and how they just keep getting perpetuated over and over and over and over in the media we consume." So while I don't want to tarnish your enjoyment of movies, that's not my intention. What I do believe is very, very important for every single one of us is to understand how to consciously consume the media that is coming at us. Because here's the thing. They've been saying for, I don't know, at least 10 or 20 years, at least 10 years, probably more like 20. But they've been saying that this is no longer the industrial economy or even the technology economy. This is the information economy. Information is the most valuable commodity right now. And what's currently happening is the business model is that your information is the most valuable thing. And what that also means is your attention, your eyes are the most valuable commodity right now. Don't give away your attention for free. Don't give away your attention to things that are going to perpetuate beliefs about women that are not empowering for you. Originally, when I wrote this, I wrote it because we also need to give ourselves a media diet of news and social media. In both of those instances, give yourself whatever is your limit. Maybe your limit is, I'm going to watch the news for 10 minutes and I'm going to watch 1 hour of whatever's your favorite program or whatever. And that's it per day. And you're not going to spend more than that. And you're not going to get sucked into any of the energy sucks that come at us that want us to be afraid and want us to feel less than. Now, for some people, it's actually really helpful to go on a media fast. So take X number of days, 7 days, 10 days, a month, whatever, and only check in on the ones that are absolutely essential for your life. Your text messages, your emails, your phone calls, and whatever is your, no, I have to check that because that's how I connect to my people. Whatever that is, and then just shut down everything else and go on a media fast and see what that does for your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Because what that is also doing for you is it is grounding you in nature. Well, you have to go out in nature a few times as well, but it is grounding you in something outside of this sort of frenetic energy that a lot of our media sources would like us to buy into. So that's the third part, is your media diet. Now, the fourth part is where it gets really juicy. The fourth part is where I take people on a really deep dive, and that is re-examining your belief system. That is where you have to decolonize your mind. I keep going back to that En Vogue song, "Free your mind and the rest will follow." Free your mind and the rest will follow. So in my workshop to decolonize your life, I include, some core practices as part of the Decolonize Your Mind, which I also have as another workshop. So this practice is where This is how I sort of brought myself out of the lowest and darkest part of my life in 2020 after the pandemic. I actually looked at the practices that I learned in graduate school when I got my doctoral degree in theater and performance, of all things, but the practices of critical autoethnography, which had me looking deeply at myself, making observations about my own thoughts, my own habits, and my own behaviors, making changes and then observing how that changed my thoughts, my habits, and behaviors so that I could understand on both a mental level and a physical level. It doesn't matter how many times we learn something in words. Until we know it in our bodies, it hasn't really fully sunk in. And so what we do when we are decolonizing our minds is we have to do a lot of shadow work. We have to do a lot of shadow work because the shadow is where we cast our projections. The shadow is where our fears live. And if we do not look deeply into our shadow and heal the parts of ourselves that we keep in hiding, then we will perpetuate our same drama and our same neuroses and our same relational problems onto another partner who is just another version of the one we just left. So to decolonize your mind, you need to start asking yourself deeply what you believe to be true, where you learned to believe that that's true, and then really ask yourself, is that my highest truth? Or is there something deeper and more authentically true to me? So, for example, we have grown up in a patriarchal system, right? And it's not that men are bad, it's that the system that prioritizes the knowledge, well-being, structure, and power of men over all others is a problem, right? And so it comes with its whole set of beliefs that we have inherited from our parents, from our churches, from our educational institutions. And because those three forces have been basically in cahoots with each other for centuries, it makes it really hard to unlearn things that we have learned and inherited from those areas. And that's where shamanic energy medicine comes in, and that's where dreams come in, and that's where integral deep listening comes in, where we listen to the parts of ourselves that we would like to hide. And we ask for wisdom and guidance in moving through our challenges with all perspectives taken into consideration, including that part of ourself that we would like to hide. It doesn't mean we always take that aspect's advice into our action, but we need to at least listen to it and understand that there is a part of ourselves that feels that way. So decolonizing your mind is the big, juicy, core, yummy, also kind of hard and difficult, but getting to the other side of that is just so liberating, and it is essential to the task of getting free. Okay, I've got a few more minutes, and I'm going to very briefly go over the last two elements of what it is to decolonize your life. You're going to need to defend yourself from toxic relationships. That's the real crux of everything. Because if you don't know how to protect yourself, and if you don't know how to set up healthy boundaries, then you just find yourself falling into the same situations over and over again. And here's the other part of setting up protections and boundaries, is that we also have to intentionally follow through and keep calling in the higher version of our truth, the higher version of our beliefs, the most empowering version of ourselves. We do it a little bit of every day. We plant the seeds. Sometimes we don't know when the seeds are going to come to fruition, but we plant the seeds so that it just gets a little bit stronger as we work these new habits and these new truths and these new beliefs. So that also has to do with regular energetic cleansing. Whatever is your practice, yoga, breathwork, smudging, whatever is your practice, prayer, whatever is your practice to do regular spiritual cleansing, regular energetic cleansing, regular emotional cleansing. Sometimes we need a good cry, right? Sometimes we just need a good cry. I did this masterclass yesterday in another group, and it's a group that's spiritually focused. And the woman who was, setting up the Zoom for me, she said, "Are you going to make me cry this time?" I was like, "No, this time I'm getting real. This time it's about real strategies to get ourselves free." But whatever is your version of spiritual cleansing, and tomorrow is a full moon. Tomorrow is an incredibly beautiful and powerful time to release old beliefs, to release old habits, to release the old identity, your former identity, that role as the wife of the person you are no longer with. That's my challenge to you, my invitation to you. Tomorrow night, sit under the light of the full moon, light a fire, and set the intention that you are releasing everything that no longer serves you. And then the other thing to defend from toxic relationships is to learn a technique for breathing through your triggers. You take as many seconds as you need to when someone triggers you to just take a deep breath. Recognize, go ahead and feel it. Recognize that triggered emotion happened. Just, okay, allow it because it's natural and normal, and then just let it pass. Breathe into it, allow it to happen, and then just let it out of your system. And then consciously, patiently decide how you want to respond, if at all. Sometimes when people are triggering us, the best thing is to just not respond, to just take a deep breath and politely excuse yourself from wherever you are. On whatever, you don't even need an excuse. Just silently walk away if you have to. If you don't know what to say and someone's triggering you, just take a deep breath, gesture, and walk away. So that's the fourth of 5, defend yourself from toxic relationships. And now that we're going into the holidays, that is also a big consideration. I don't know if you're like me, but every time I used to go home for the holidays, it was the most stressful time of the year because I was the youngest of 6 in a family that had 6 very, very different personalities, political ideologies all over the spectrum, from the very right wing to the very left wing. And somehow we were all supposed to come together and be happy that we were together and not have all of that, toxic banter going back and forth. So yeah, defend yourself through the holidays from everything that's coming your way, especially from the tension and the dynamics of whatever's going to happen in terms of, if you have kids, where the kids go. Just breathe through it. Trust that when you are present with your family and with your children, that you are going to be as loving and present as you possibly can be, and that when you are not with them, when they're going with the former spouse or with their other family or whatever, that you just trust that they're going to have their own additional beautiful time there, and you're not going to worry. Worry does not help. Okay, the last part, number 5, and I'm just going to end in another minute here, is imagining your way through the darkness. You have more resilience than you know. You have more strength than you know. And the best way to cultivate both of those things is through creativity. When we tap our imagination and when we exercise our creativity, those stimulate the skills that help us with our general problem solving in life, and it helps us to move through whatever we're facing with just a little more joy. Add a little bit of a sense of play to everything. So I'm going to end for you there today. In the description of this summit presentation is the link to register for the 2-hour Decolonize Your Life workshop on Black Friday. I also want to encourage you to go to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be dropping a bunch of meditation tracks on Black Friday so that if you want to tune out the noise and tune in to a higher frequency of love, bliss, joy, serenity, compassion, forgiveness, I'm here for it. I'm here for you. I'm here for us. See you later.